So this is an example of the hippocamp as it came off the fountain in the shop. The conditions that after cleaning you can see the legs are universally very deteriorated, bad repairs, exposed reinforcing rod, cracking, and all will be replaced. However, the bodies are in much better condition. There are losses that are related to either erosion from water exposure or corrosion of the embedded ironwork, and we'll see examples of that and then the repairs that occur. But in general, after cleaning, you can see that for the most part, the sculpture work is still there, the tooling marks, the careful detailing all remains, and so that's why these are in fact appropriate to preserve rather than replicate as the other parts of the fountain will be. And this is the original texture where it's protected, and this is the texture that in fact still remains on the bodies, and so this kind of finish is in fact not a eroded finish, but rather the original finish, including the slight variations in color, which the restoration will incorporate in the new finishes. After removal of the cracked pieces of cast stone, you can see the reinforcing rods. These are obviously, they don't have what's called adequate cover. There's only a little bit, an inch or so below the surface, and that's why they've rusted, and in rusting expanded and cracked the cast stone. So these will be removed. These are the supporting rods, which will also be removed and replaced with a new system using stainless steel and a injected grout that will be secure and not as vulnerable to later loss. And this shows you, after removal of the legs, the void that was originally part of the design. They were held on with these reinforcing rods. These will be replaced with a new stainless steel system that will be cast into the new legs and then pinned the same way this is, with a cross pin, and then full grouted to seal them in place. The losses here will all be rebuilt or replaced with new cast stone that will match the original color and texture, and the cracks and so on will be filled as well. The losses are built up in clay, which is textured. The detailing, like the teeth and the tongues, the furrows at the nostrils, the detailing around the eyes is all rebuilt in clay, and then a mold will be made so that new castings can be made from that mold, which will then be either the basis of new model pieces or actually used to cast new replacements here. So these repairs, even though they're very carefully done and colored, as you see here, still have a capacity to stand out a little bit. So to unify the finish in the end, a mineral coating will be applied. This is a potassium silicate paint. There's no organic binder. It's all just minerals, but it bonds very well with the substrate and produces a coating that will both make the appearance more consistent, but also slowly erode away over time so that it could be replicated and renewed as part of a maintenance of the fountain every 10, 15, 20 years. This too will have a custom color mix so that it continues to have this variation as it originally did. These are some of the rubber molds that they use to make the texture. So in building up the clay patches, I mean rather the mortar patches, the rubber is pressed into it to get the original texture in the replacements, and they're not too smooth. So these are the rebuilt legs. This is the cast. But the very severe deterioration was rebuilt with clay, the same textures put into them, the lost bits of tendon and muscles that had previously been eroded were rebuilt, the claws at the end that turned these from horses to hippocamps were rebuilt, and a rubber mold was made from that over there. Those then were used to cast new positives, and this is the mold. This is good for just these small replicas, but not good for production. So then after adjustment, these casts became those, and those are then being cast again in rubber, which will be used for actual production of the new legs. Here's one partially embedded in the process of having the rubber mold made. And then with the new stainless steel armature will be cast and attached to the original bodies. These will then be integrated with the new cast basins and elements in the fountain and unified so that it is, as it should be, a well cared for historic fountain as Mayas there designed it.
process?
The city of Palm Beach should be very proud after this whole process to both be able to reclaim what could be saved, the original fountain, restore the original design, Meisner's design, and have an excellent team of craftspeople who are engaged in this, very knowledgeable conservators and craftspeople who are doing the work, which we can assure you is going to be to the highest standards of the field and survive well into, let's hope, the next century, as this one has from the last.